So, continuing the recap, recall that counties provide mandated and non-mandated services. And so what's happening is a squeeze play, and this is a rough illustrative chart, but essentially here's mandated services, here's in the greenish blue is non-mandated or discretionary services. Here's what's happening with our revenues, and as you can see, it's meaning that we're going to need to contract our discretionary services, and quite frankly, we're going to need to contract this as well in terms of level of service in the mandated services. We've already been responding to these pressures and making cuts. In December of 2008, Department of Community Development reduced staff by 8, cut remaining staff hours 10%, and implemented a 4-day work week. In August of this year, they laid off 3 additional staff, and the general fund needed to give a above budgeted infusion of $125,000 this year and next. In April of this year, you lowered, with the assistance of the treasurer and the assessor and in consultation with the auditor as well, our general fund revenue projections for this year by approximately $1 million. We made across the board staff hour cuts of 6.25% for May through the end of this year, and other budget adjustments were also announced at that time to fill the gap. More recently, in September and October, public health has closed environmental health on Fridays. We've cut back our public health nurse support for many mothers of newborns, and also cut family planning clinics by 1 day a week. Now, many of these are in response to the overall economy and some of the fee for services and permit fees that have come in, but is indicative of what's going on in our economy and for government as a whole. We're having to contract. And also, less than a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, County Parks announced plans to close 4 parks in 2009, and also significantly cut maintenance to 6 additional parks this year, and next year targeting to cut maintenance to 6 more parks for a total of 12 parks with maintenance cutbacks and 4 closed. So that's essentially all of our park facilities. And that is directly related to the general fund. So these are just the first of many difficult decisions the county will need to make to address the state's structural funding gap for county services. So let me give you an update. So far that's been a recap. Let me give you an update of where we are now. In August, I mentioned the $1.9 million gap over the next 5 years. Today, based on the preliminary budget requests that have been submitted by the departments and some updated information we've got, we're looking at a little bit more than that, about $2.025 million. So, let me talk. Yes,
before we get into that, I think maybe just a point of clarification that these numbers and graphs reveal this problem, but it's a problem that all of us in this room really have been working on for years in terms of the structural problem, and that's in addition to all the things we've done this year. It's been part of the budget process year after year of being strategic in how we spend money and how we curb our costs in each department. Just to plan for this, what we didn't plan on was the big backdrop of the national recession. So,
right.
Just a point of clarification here.
Good, thank you. So let me talk a little bit about Initiative 1033, which is on the November ballot. 1033 would limit the growth in county and city revenues deposited in their current expense funds or our general fund. General fund revenue growth would be limited to the rate of inflation, which is, in this case, described as the implicit price, it says price deflator. It should say price deflator, or IPD, and plus population growth. The initiative would create what's called a lower property taxes account for any revenues above that limit, where revenues would be, excess revenues would be deposited into that account and essentially credited to the following year's assessment to lower property taxes. The initiative does, however, allow for some additional revenues above the IPD and population growth. Number one is if there are new voter-approved revenues, those revenues are outside the limit. And as I understand it, some county general fund revenues, such as grants from state and federal government, some shared state shared taxes, contracted services such as the sheriff's services with the Hogue tribe, and interest earnings, I believe, are outside that. And I'm looking at the treasurer and she is shaking her head, and I may be wrong about interest income.
I've never heard interest was excluded.
Okay, so there's a caveat on that one. And that's a significant issue for us.
Yeah.
The state's official fiscal impact analysis is, for Initiative 1033 is that the state itself by 2015 will lose $5.9 billion in revenue for state government. Counties would lose collectively $694 million, and cities collectively would lose $2.1 billion in revenue. So how does 1033 potentially affect Jefferson County? So here again is our August estimate. Here's our October estimate without Initiative 1033. Here's our estimate with 1033. So basically we're going for slightly over $2 million to an additional $550,000. That's by 2014, that would be the difference we see. In addition, we would see after that each year at least another $158,000 of additional cuts or revenue reductions or expenditure reductions rather that we would need to make each year or find voter approved revenue.